Hello, this is Jay Mitchell, and we are back for another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts on the Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. Let's get right into it. First we have, it's already illegal to sell cigarettes to kids anyways, but somehow preventing adults from buying certain tobacco products for their own consumption is helping kids. And that's from International Silver One. That's a cross post from the Shit Status Say subreddit. And that's it. And it links to a tweet from the American Academy of Pediatrics on Twitter, and they said, in a disappointing and dangerous move, the Biden administration signaled it will delay its final rules prohibiting menthol cigarettes. AAP urges the Biden administration to finalize these rules now and eliminate these harmful products once and for all. And I said, put whatever you want into your body. I've always been against the war on drugs. Then we have, you are in fact not immune to propaganda. Crosswords from political or slash political compass memes, and I posted that. And that was the left center Wojak says, "Oh, us younger generations don't fall for your silly propaganda." He's next to Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC. And then then in the next panel he's next to TikTok, Instagram, Reddit. And he says, "OMG, wow, OMG, so true." And I said, everyone is susceptible to propaganda except me, average Redditor. You know, no one is the arbiter of truth. Everyone has their own agenda. I personally prefer social media a bit more because the people can control the agenda that way more so than traditional media, like cable news and newspapers. So that's why I personally prefer it. But you know, everyone does have an agenda, and it's important to remember that. Then we have satanic display at Iowa Capitol vandalized beyond repair, arrest made, from KCRG.com, from Doctor Who 07. And I said, well, Dr. Who 07 said, satanic embellage would push to prosecute this as a hate crime. If someone had done this to a nativity scene, it would absolutely be considered one. I said, it shouldn't be a hate crime in either instance. We shouldn't be charging people for their motivations, but their actions. I personally don't care for vandalism, but if people want to justify it, that's on them. Look at all the statues that were vandalized in 2020, for example. I don't think anyone who did that was charged with a hate crime, but I don't know for sure. I personally don't want the state to be a judge of people's morals, and especially when it comes to ideological intent, I would say. So, next we have Argentina's security minister announces crackdown on protests from FT.com, from Coastal Schmostal, and I said, apparently he appointed Patricia Bullrich, who he ran against as the security minister. I said, Bullrich struck me as more Mitt Romney Republican than Milei's Ron Paul Republican. I'm surprised he appointed her security minister. So, you know, it's just to show you that, you know, a lot of politics is getting stabbed in the back, especially if you're a small government libertarian. Because, you know, it's either getting stabbed in the front, you say they say they're not libertarian on the campaign trail, or they're libertarian on the campaign trail, and they start stabbing you in the back. So that's always important to think about, you know. Then we have an example of why hate crime charges are always going to be inherently subjective, and that was a self-post that I made, and I said, let's say 3 men each tear down a statue. One tears down a statue of Hitler, one tears down a statue of Marx, and one tears down a statue of Jesus. By charging these men with anything but the same crime, the state inherently is deciding what is good and what is bad, and I personally don't think the state should be officially declaring what ideologies are good and which ones are bad, even if the ideologies are awful as fascism or communism. Thoughts. And I would agree with that, you know, because, you know, you have people on the other side arguing that tearing down a statue of state and on government property is a hate crime. I personally don't care for state, but that is subjective as well, you know. What can constitute hate crime is ultimately subjective because, you know, it's all like all the categories, you know, they say there's certain categories, like Dr. Who 07, like, at the federal level, hate crime laws include crimes committed on the basis of victims' perceived or actual race, color, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. And I said, those categories were all chosen subjectively. Why not include hair color, political ideology, height, weight, eye color, facial hair status, etc. while you're at it? Because, you know, it's ultimately all subjective when it comes to... Most people think Satan is evil. It's a subreddit pushing for restoring a statue of him as a hate crime. It really is all subjective when you think about it. Ultimately, anything can be declared to be a religion. If there was a statue of Hitler that got torn down that was placed there by a group who worshipped him, then most readers will feel differently in the issue. They just think Satan is okay because they view him as fictional. Because, Satan is very much acceptable edgelording, while Hitler, is very much unacceptable edgelording in the current liberal climate, I would say. Then we have, and this is why I said I call him anything but libertarian, mostly call him a fascist, from Maniconda 413, and that was, it links to two tweets. One was Malay 2023, and it says Javier Milei, Donald Trump, and they look they'll be in the same position. Then David Adler tweeted, breaking President Javier Milei announces a total crackdown on Argentine civil society, calling on armed forces to break strikes, arrest protesters, protect children from families that bring them to demos, and form a new national registry of all agitating organizations. And I said, to be fair, Redditors call pretty much anyone politically right of Bernie fascist anyway. So, that even if he was perfect, they'd still probably call him a fascist. So it just goes to show you that, they definitely have their narrative, I would say. Then we have, the truth is starting to finally come out about the extent of Ukraine's manpower problems. They're literally snatching up the mentally disabled and a 58-year-old taxi drivers to force them to fight, from Sagar and Jetty on Twitter, and I posted that, and I said, this subreddit, fuck conscription and fuck the draft. Me, what about Ukraine's conscription? And then this subreddit is for the greater good. I personally think Ukraine does have the moral high ground compared to Russia, but that doesn't mean they're angels that you can't criticize. So that's, they already don't care for Russia and Israel, so that's why I don't really bring them up too much, but you can't criticize Ukraine at all without them coming after you for it. And I like what Ninja Lover says here, my heart breaks for Ukraine, they're in a fight for their very survival as the world turns a blind eye, and I said, it's literally the most talked about conflict in the world right outside of Israel/Palestine. It's hardly a blind eye. The Central African Republic has been in civil war since 2012 and no one's really noticed. That's a blind eye. So, because, that's the thing is, there are a lot of awful conflicts in the world that just simply aren't culturally relevant from a geopolitical or narrative standpoint, and thus they don't get marketed, and no one really cares when people die. It's all subjective. When what conflicts people care about. What the people care about, what the media tells them to care about, and that's ultimately why every conflict is ultimately, I would say, all media rage and narratives are manufactured. It's not organic. The media exists to create and control this agenda, this narrative, and even social media, you're still seeing it push kind of the same narratives as traditional media, and hopefully that starts to split as time moves on when we can push our own narratives. Then we have, the LGBT clause has become one of the most valuable weapons for militaristic countries and repressive security agencies to embrace as means of convincing people they're noble and loving, from Glenn Greenwald on Twitter, and I posted that, and I said, that was his quote tweet of Kyle Seraphin, who stated, between breaking today's all FBI cuffs email sent to all hashtag FBI employees. The FBI has officially adopted the LGBTQIA+ acronym in place of LGBT+. This change is proposed by Bureau of Quality, one of our 9 diversity advisory committees. And I said, I linked to the pinkwashing for LGBT Wikipedia page, and I said, people will hate government for terrorism, then start justifying when Imperial is brought up. The FBI tortures, spies on, and kills people, but suddenly they use identity politics to make themselves look good, and people fall for it, and that's not good. You're not FBI ain't your friends. They and the CIA are the ones who really run the government. But, no one really cares about them because because people are too caught up in the Trump-Biden soap opera rather than the people who are actually running the government. Because, the drama isn't there. It's mostly with the Trump, Biden, whoever the president is stuff. And that's important why, they need that to keep you distracted from who's really in power, I would say. And how they also use identity politics to their benefit. Then we have, if the government outlawed anti-LGBTQIA+ speech, Ron DeSantis would endlessly be reclaiming defend religious freedom, stop cancel culture, and defending free speech. But as soon as it's the Satanic Temple and pro-plasma people, and all of a sudden the religious freedom and party speech don't matter. and from Asher Silver 1, and that was their post of a tweet from Ron DeSantis. Tweet: Satan has no place in our society and should not be recognized as a religion by the federal government. All should have been decreed as Veterans Legal Defense Fund. Good prevails over evil. That's the American spirit. And I personally would kind of more agree with that. Satan is kind of evil compared to, but, ultimately it's all subjective, as I said, the conservatives always say we'll need to defend religious freedom, stop cancel religion, defend free speech, but, when push comes to shove, they don't do that, because, they're going to be biased as well, and that's ultimately why, we don't know, I don't know if we can have, I know I've seen Arn McIntyre post on Twitter about, I don't know if we can have neutral institutions, and that's kind of like that, they think, we can have neutral institutions, and, we can have, objective good and bad, but sadly, that's not the world we live in. We live in a world where everything's kind of gray, and I think that's important to remember. That's why I think, the institution is going to be inherently biased. That's why we need to get rid of the institution. Conservatives just want to control the institution. We need to get rid of the institution. And I'll do another post that talks about that later. Then we have, the boy has every right to be angry that this is genital mutilation of a boy that's little child abuse. About all abuse, this is also a type of content the so-called anti-child mutilation political party loves ignoring. I support a ban on genital mutilation. We're not over 1, and that was a link to a tweet from a Bloodstained Man on Twitter. Men laugh at boy angry after circumcision. And I definitely would agree, I think if you don't consent to circumcision, you shouldn't be forced to do it. And, that's why I think, when you do it before people can consent, I think that's why, I don't know if we should be justifying stuff like that. So that's my thoughts there. Then we have less than a week into office, Argentinian President Javier Milei is about to sign a 300-page long emergency executive order with a list of business regulations that are repealed. The first page reads very simply, repeal, from Daniel DiMartino on Twitter, and I posted that, and I said, he hasn't been perfect so far, but you have to give him credit where it's due. Then we have the federal government recently put out a report warning that Catholics and other Christians are very likely to be terrorists. DeSantis wants them to be in charge of deciding what religions are valid. Conservatives are addicted to giving their enemies more power. And I said, the conservatives just want to control the institutions that the liberals currently control. The libertarian knows the only way to true freedom is to abolish those institutions. We kind of talked about that earlier, but I definitely stand by that point. The idea of the institution is inherently authoritarian, I would say, and that's why we need to overthrow the institutions and just replace them with nothing, and just let people make their own institutions as long as they are part of them voluntarily. I'm part of I'm personally a Christian, so I personally identify as a member of the church, but that's an organization I'm voluntarily a part. That's an institution I'm voluntarily a part of. You're not an institution that I'm inherently controlled by, like the government institutions we see currently. Then we have Biden and many others in a nutshell from National Silver 1, and that's the cross-person political means subreddit. And the blue guy says, vote for me because I'm not my opponent, and the press says, what do you stand for? And he says, not being my opponent, and they say, what's your name? Not my opponent's name. That's from BerkeleyMews.com, it looks like, that's what the watermark on it says. And I said, I don't know if I said anything here, but it's definitely true, it's always lesser of two evil voting, and that's why, ranked choice voting might be better, but, I think the duopoly is so entrenched since they've been dominant party since the 1850s, I don't think that would be too much higher. That's why I think we need, personally, the whole system reset. Just start over from square one, to let everyone have their own government at this point, because I don't know if we can ever get out of this system. Then we have, could a system which each individual has their own system of government work? And I posted that, and I said, I would say yes. It might not sound realistic, but humans have never been held back by what is considered realistic. Human history is full of moments when people have made the impossible possible. I think the above system would be the ideal libertarian one. Libertarians support individual rights and believe that each individual should be the ones primarily make decisions about their own life rather than a centralized state. In many ways, we live in a system where each individual has their own system of government right now. In a country like the U.S., people are already free to make and justify whatever decisions they want to, and are not forced to participate in government side some stuff like taxes and enforce laws. And then I also added, I think anarchy gets a bad rap. If an individual wants to have that be their system, they should be able to do so, but it ignores that most collectives people are in there involuntarily. This suburb is a great example. No one is forcing anyone to be here. So ultimately, justice and government are all going to be subjective, and I think that's important to remember as well. So, I think we just need to let everyone alone and make their own decisions rather than have a centralized state for them, as I said. Then we have Milei hit the ground running in his first week as Argentina's president, opinion from MiamiHerald.com from 2000 Time of Charm. And I said, I like how he got rid of all the regulations. With that being said, he hasn't been perfect, as the subreddit has noted. He appointed Bullrich as security minister, and he always struck me as more of a Republican to Milei's Ron Paul Republican. And 2000 Time of Charm said, politics is all about compromise. He said, you're right, compromising your rights away. So, I personally think Milei's been a bit what I expected so far. Some good stuff, some bad stuff. But, I definitely think, you can't compromise your rights away, and that's often what government is doing, I would say. And we have Giuliani's word to pay $148 million to Georgia election workers he defamed from Zachness, and that's a link to a story from, I think AP News. I'll have to check. Let's see, we're waiting for it to load, gonna get back up. And that's a story from, NPR. And, I personally think, I don't really like Giuliani, but I think we need to support free speech. And, I think, you should be able to defame anyone you want, or slander anyone, or libel anyone you want, without facing any consequences for it. So that's my faults there. So I personally don't like Giuliani, but I think this goes against free speech, so that's my fault there. Then we have a black woman was criminally charged after a miscarriage. It shows the perils of pregnancy post-row from apnews.com by geeky username. And I don't comment on this one since they have me blocked. But, yeah, I definitely don't think we should be justified charging people for just having miscarriages. So that's my thoughts there. And we have, what are your hobbies or interests? And I said, and that's just from 2000 Time Charm. They said, here's might be humanizing effect. Or you guys want to talk about some more differences? Any cigar smokers in the house, hobbies, interests you enjoy? Maybe a friendly chat will be good for the culture of the sub. And I said, general cultural and political stuff, sports, Pokemon Go, and whatever else of interest I find online. That's what was probably my main hobbies. And of course, doing this podcast. And then we have, to be completely fair, this isn't necessarily as bad as the collective fucking of the American people that has been occurring in that room for decades, from Sue on Head on Twitter. And that was her reply to, the story about exclusive Senate staffer caught filming gay sex tape in Senate hearing room graphic. And I said, at least 2 centuries at this point, because he said for decades, and I said at least 2 centuries, because, that the Capitol was completed around 1800, and, the government's always been fucking everyone over since at least the Code of Hammurabi, so, yeah, that's always important to note, this is, it's only convenient someone is getting fucked in the government buildings now, because, the government always fucks people over outside of them, it seems. Then we have, to be fair, social media had been around 1773, they probably would have just completely ended out on it instead. From LP National on Twitter, and I posted that, and that was my reply to them. It said there was 1773 response to 3% tax rate, this Boston Tea Party, which was I think 250 years ago today, and then 2017 response to 49% tax, and it's just guys sleeping on the sofa. So, yeah, I definitely think, we need to definitely be more, have more, inspiration and to try and taking down the big state, the big government, but I don't know if that's coming anytime soon. And finally, we have the public has collectively decided that your worldview is one of the bad things you are neo-banned by, from Josh Equal, and that was his reply on Twitter, and that was his reply to Inudi Ammonia, who said, these people feel aggressive to play on the left is good, was play on the right is bad. A government should be pro-good things and anti-bad things. He said the Christian slave was good and the Satan slave was bad, and I said, just goes to show that they shouldn't be regulated what is moral or not. I personally don't care for the statue of Satan in a government building, but if people want to justify putting it up there, that's on them. I would say the same thing of the statue of Hitler. Of course, for a lot of people, that would be seen as different because Hitler was a real person, while Satan is fictional. If people can form a church of Satan, after all, what stops them from forming a church of Hitler? So,
ultimately, it is all subjective, what is religious and what isn't. And, that's why I think, we shouldn't be putting any stuff in government buildings, really, but ultimately, if you want to justify putting ideological stuff in government buildings, that's going to be on you, and someone might justify tearing it down, that's just how, it is, ultimately, it's all who controls what and who has the power to put what where, ultimately. And I think we're going to wrap it up there. I don't know if we have anything new. If we have anything new. We have everything new. An Israeli real estate company is already advertising homes at passport pre-sale prices on Gaza rubble. So much for free market capitalism groups living and creating a Palestinian exception to their ideology and stealing Palestinian land. That's number one. A cross post from the Palestinian subreddit. And I personally would agree that, that's kind of, we shouldn't be justifying taking people's land and putting houses on it, but that's just kind of how life is sometimes. I just saw a good segment from Bill Maher. I'm personally more sympathetic to Palestine, but, at some point you just have to cope with losing land, like the Native Americans did, or, like a lot of people have lost land, like Native Americans is a big one, and, a lot of, the French in Algeria, and a lot of people in, a lot of the Jews themselves in Eastern Europe. So that's also important to remember, I would say. So I think we're gonna wrap it up there, and I'll see you guys next episode. Bye.